Today's episode includes some stories that'll crawl under your skin and stay there. But before we get started, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then welcome, because that's all we do and we upload every day. So if that's something you're into, please volunteer to walk the like button's dog. Then, halfway through, just drop the leash and whisper, "You're free now." Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Also, subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss our daily uploads. Okay, let's begin.
The door in his basement wasn't there yesterday. Late October, year 2018, West 73rd Street was getting shoved around by that lake wind, long, hard gusts that make whole blocks clench their teeth. Rain ticked the gutters like pinball. Inside a brick duplex that still smelled like plaster dust and stubborn varnish, a 37-year-old hospital electrician named Callum Brenner was doing what he did most nights. Fixing his future with his hands so his head didn't wander. Callum had bought the place in June, ripped up carpet in July, learned the patience of plaster in August. By September, he could ID every pipe by sound. The furnace, original to that era when guys wore hats to breakfast, cleared its throat every evening like an old smoker, then usually behaved. Widowed at 33 by a soft word doctors hate, Callum had decided you can outwork the long hours if you give them a job. His job was this house. A blue notebook on the kitchen counter held the list. Beside it sat a chipped ham radio mug, Coil Me Maybe, that he pretended not to like. He'd been in the basement 100 times. It was a good basement by neighborhood standards. Poured walls, old coal chutes, mortared shut in the 1960s. Work sink with a stain shaped exactly like Michigan. Two doors down there, one cream painted into a porch cubby full of sleeping paint cans. The other a janky plank into a crawl space where the October Mice Union held meetings. He knew both. He'd made peace with both. He had not met the third. At 21:42, after losing an argument with a breaker and eating dinner like a raccoon at the counter, he headed down to relight the pilot. He liked that moment, the polite click, the soft womp winter delayed by a thumb. He rounded the stair, set his phone on a joist for light, looked up, and stopped, like someone was dimming him instead of flipping him off. There was a door in the west wall. Not a door he must have missed. Not boxes stacked weird. He'd scrubbed that concrete in August with vinegar and a bad attitude. It had been wall. Now it was a door, same in different cream as the other trim mortise latch, casing with the exact roller lint pimples from some distracted owner 3 tenants back. A strip of blue tape was slapped across the brass like a utility tag. It even crunched under his knuckle when he knocked neither hollow nor solid. A hotel of a sound, Callum said it out loud. Because good rooms appreciate honesty. That was not there yesterday. The furnace clicked, caught, and steadied as if proposing a trade. You let me keep one mystery, I'll give you heat. He stared at the tape. It said utility in tiny letters and a number no department in Cleveland uses. Upstairs, he wrote it in the blue book. Wednesday, late October, year 2018, new door, west wall, basement. He made coffee he didn't want. Then he called the one neighbor who knows the right nouns for the wrong problems. Genevieve Trask had worked 30 years in the bus yard parts department. Even her dog, Primitive Pete, followed house rules like a union contract. She'd been on West 73rd since the streetlights still rang like bells when they got swapped to sodium. Callum asked if she'd come tell him whether he'd just lost a fight with his eyes. My pleasure, she said, like someone who's risen for worse. They went down. Jen stood, silent, 10 seconds flat. Then, measuring flour careful. That was not there yesterday. Primitive Pete sat, lifted a paw, set it down. The blue tape didn't peel when Jen tested it. The brass under it was guilty clean, like it had been avoiding hands for months. She put her ear to the wood, jaw loose like a piano tuner. The worst kind of quiet, she said at last. Not a human, not a machine. Something that learned to be polite, living next to both. They left it shut, played a hand of gin upstairs. Jen insisted on losing gracefully. Callum walked her to the gate, watched Pete joy inventory the night, and because tongues check, bad teeth went down for one more look. The thing stayed a thing. In the morning, he called the utility mark line, contract inspections. They'd swing by Thursday unless the wind ate their schedule. And Otho Dwyer, night maintenance at the hospital. Collector of left-handed screwdrivers. Saint of simple machines. Otho showed at 1910 carrying a case that looked like it should say violin and didn't. Scope camera. He slid the head between casing and wall. The screen coughed up gray concrete, then darkness with the smoothness of air and the meanness of a throat. Some jokes take too much setup, Otho murmured, brushing the tape with the back of a finger. Tastes like municipal lie. They didn't open it. Otho poured exactly one finger of rye and told the story of an elevator that grew a sense of humor in a humorless building. He left the scope. Callum slept on the sofa because the living room had windows and the basement didn't. He dreamed of blue tape, a polite click, and a nurse's voice saying, "Not yet." Thursday, 14/27. Voicemail from inspections diverted to a sinkhole at Denison. Second voicemail from an unknown number, just silence that didn't know how to hold its breath. Then a whisper from very far down a hall. "Don't come down while the light is wrong." He went home anyway. Top of the stairs, he made the announcement men only make to empty rooms. If you're human, show me your shoes. If you're not, invitation rescinded. The furnace behaved. The sump pump cleared its throat. He set a carpenter's lamp on the floor to make a small, honest city of light, and with a stub of chalk, he drew a line along the bottom of the door. If you can't make sense, you can measure. He knocked once. The sound came back too soft. He pressed his palm to the panel, neither warm nor cold. It felt like skin in a room that doesn't want you to cry. "I don't believe in you enough to be afraid," he said, on purpose lying. Houses respect effort. He turned to leave. On the far side, something trailed a fingertip down the wood from above the latch to below it, very slow, like it was teaching itself grain. He didn't move. The chalk line held. He said his wife's name once, softly, a key to a true door. Friday, 21/15, he and Jen stood there again. Primitive Pete approved the dryer. The tape had a new diagonal crease, like a latch lifted, then politely reset. Jen hovered her hand over it like a candle. "You are not the first house on this block to breathe into the wrong room," she said. In 2006, during the epic flood, the city dug out the storm line in the alley and found an old brick run, prohibition beer, and better stories. They sealed what they could see. They did not seal what refused to admit wanting sealing. "That's where the undertalk lives," she said. "Not your house's fault it learned the language. Not yours for hearing it. We lean a chair and don't make introductions." "Be here at 10 with coffee and a man who likes rules," Callum said. She brought the sheriff. Sheriff Whitaker looked like he still hauled hay for friends. Face built for learning the same story from both sides and deciding where mercy fits. He listened to Callum, to Gen, to Pete, who sneezed once, officially endorsing the facts. Whitaker pressed his ear to the panel, knocked a pattern. Too slow, pause. Two no one uses unless they suspect a test. The door answered, one slow, three quick like it understood and preferred to show off. "We're going to treat this like a person who talks too much and too sweet to a child," Whitaker said. No drama. "We don't answer. We call boring people with rope courtesy over magic." At 10:50, Building Inspector Ninette Polk arrived, clipboard, caution tape, and two public works guys who dig with shovels and silent. She measured, tapped the concrete with a screwdriver, jaw loose, head cocked. "Double wall," she said. "Face wall. Behind it, not wall. Behind that, not our business yet. The plan, open the outside from the alley, look at it like breakfast. If breakfast looks like sin, you eat elsewhere." By noon, the alley had a careful hole. Brick, then more brick, then a slump of coal pretending it wasn't old. Ninette rolled her light into the throat beam, sliding along clay to a small cleared space. A tin cup, a folded blanket whose corners remembered hands, a stone pile with soot above it, a fire where fire made no sense. We've had squatters, she said. We've had people who didn't choose to be squatters, and we've had tunnels that confuse maps. This is a little of everything. Whitaker braced a gloved hand on the edge, leaned without betting his weight on anything foolish. At dusk, we come with 2 more bodies and a rope round my waist. We stand in your west room and say hello in a voice that can't hurt anyone. He took his pen and signed the blue tape, 10:16 on a Saturday. No underline, no smiley. Dusk. The wind inhaled and held. 3 across at the bottom of the stairs. The house delivered 1 timid knock, then, like it decided it needed a new tactic, went silent. Whitaker tied his rope to an old ceiling ring, laundry duty in another life, double knotted. He laid his palm on the tape, talked to the house like a dog flirting with a bad idea. We are not setting our tongues on this latch tonight. They moved the chair, lifted the latch without breaking the tape. The door opened a finger's width on its own resistance. Air came through at the temperature of old apology, coal, and long rain. His shoulder light showed a low brick run, 4 courses high, then a gap all along the top like the mason knew better and got paid by a man who didn't. In the dust beyond, 4 finger marks, evenly spaced. Someone who'd learned to count to 4 and wanted company, and a 5th, shorter one like a tired heart. Whitaker didn't step through. He bent, lowered his head, and said a name to no one like a midwife teaching an empty room the word it's waiting for. Is anyone here who can stand the sound of their own name? 20 heartbeats, then a cough from the corridor, not brave, not sick, small on purpose. A voice, careful, like someone who only wants to borrow the part of the law that cares more about living than rules. I am hungry. Come into the light then, Whitaker said, measured. No names, no introductions to the dark. A face glanced into the cone, then jerked out. Quick, private decision. The figure didn't cross. Do you have a sandwich? They asked. Jen started to answer. Whitaker lifted a hand. The room obeyed. We have a sandwich. You may have it on this side. He set it on the brick, stepped back a generous pace. A thin hand took it. Gratitude made of bread and shame filled the small room. I didn't steal the ring, the voice said. The ring was already in here. It's welded to the wall. We'll speak again in the morning, Whitaker said, as if this were any kitchen, any night. If you're still here, that would be a blessing. The dark laughed, once surprised at the word blessing. Then, I'll be here, the rain decided to stay. They closed the door. No chair, sometimes chairs are theater when you need policy. Sleep came in the way it does when a house tries to grow a new tongue. Morning, the chalk line had a clean nick where the door had opened and closed. The tape now had 2 creases. In the alley, the little camp had a second cup that hadn't been there. On the brick, a note, careful hand, fountain pen tidy. Thank you, I won't be here long if you leave it. I know the way that does not ask you to break your rules. I followed voices, and that was my mistake. I am leaving now by the other mouth. Nanette read it, folded once, bagged it, dated it in words events like this should resist numbers. Sometimes people want a story, she said. Sometimes they want a door that says, no, we'll build you the second one. They hired masons from Ohio City argument-winning walls. A second wall went up in front of the first, tied with rebar that enjoyed its job. They pumped the crawl with flowable fill. Fill is kinder than concrete. Cut a new drain to the alley with the city's blessing, which almost never happens and did. They left the door hung for the sake of the room so a man, mug in hand, a year from now, could touch a latch and remember that fear behaves when it isn't fed. One Sunday in December, after the work and after the lake found its winter voice, Callum stood at the bottom of the stairs, set a sandwich and a thermos on the brick, no speech, no theater, listen. The house was just a house. You don't get to grow a new door without telling me first, he said, mostly to make the air file the sentence somewhere. Winter settled. Primitive Pete suffered boots. Jen taught Callum to let houses tell their little understories without volunteering his name. Whitaker sent a holiday card with a knot on the front. Otho reclaimed his scope, pretended to be offended at how clean the lens came back. Nanette drove by twice in January to make sure the wall looked like it meant it. In spring, the city found more legacy brick down the alley and filled that too. The report used the word legacy like a period. Every now and then after midnight, wind slides between those houses like a memory that learned to walk. The furnace coughs a sound you could mishear as a polite knock. A man stands in his basement with his palm on a harmless latch and says the names of the people who made a strange night decent: Genoveva, Otho, Ninette, Whitaker, and the name of the woman he loved, because names are keys, and grief is a door you don't open so much as a company. Then he turns out the light. Basements have long jobs. They don't need help from shadows that think they're clever. If you ever buy an old house in a city that keeps secrets under its sidewalks, you might wake up to a door where plaster swore no door would be. You don't owe it curiosity at midnight. You owe it a list, a lamp that won't lie, a neighbor who can make quiet into a tool, and the dull bravery the trades teach. Knock once, count to 20, call someone with rope, and if a voice on the other side calls your name like it's entitled to it, remember the single sentence that carried an ordinary man and his unremarkable house through a night when the city tried to breathe through his wall. We're not answering, we're not leaving, we're coming back with more people and better light. The recording that should have never been played. Late September 2013. Central Kansas. Wheat laid flat by wind that came off the prairie in long, mean sheets. The Sumner County Historical Annex, an old brick co-op turned archive, sat there taking it. Inside, one lamp, one table, one woman. Her name was Vesper Lyle, 38. Precise. The kind of voice you imagine coming off a radio tower at dawn. Archivist on paper, stubborn caretaker in practice. That night she stayed late because the road crew dumped a pallet of boxes from a foreclosed farmhouse north of Caldwell. Ledger books, seed catalogs, Polaroids gone to ghosts. Then the fourth box, wrapped in a green bath towel, gone gray at the edges, a shoebox cassette recorder, handle cracked, church label on the underside, bruised purple from age. Someone had written a name in laundry marker, then crossed it out. Beneath it, a new line in neat hand, East Meridian Baptist, choir room, do not circulate. Vesper did what good archivists do. Carded it, numbered it, turned her lamp so the warm circle held the machine like a stage. And then the wind rattled the front door. Lightning blew out the entry glass. She reached for the switch, turned, and froze. The play button was down. The reels were crawling, lazy, stubborn, as if the tape was heavy with whatever it was about to make the room remember. Vesper crossed the floor, pressed stop. The button fought her like it'd been glued in place by time. The reels sighed to a halt. She laughed once, no humor in it, locked the thing in a steel cabinet at her feet, and called dispatch. Torenhovel answered, midnight voice. She told him about the storm, the boxes, the busted cartwheel. She did not mention the recorder. People who work nights don't invite extra work into a room. At 7:58 p.m., the rain came sideways, overheads dipped, then died. Her lamp fizzled off. The building went aquarium dim under the exit signs. She pulled the flashlight, swung the beam to the cabinet. The door was open. Inside, the play button was down again, the spools moving, barely. A hiss rose, grain by grain. Then the human room hum like heat caught on ribbon decades ago. A woman cleared her throat. Trained voice, hymnal vowels. The room she was in back then held her like warm wood. If you have found this and you are not me, please stop, the woman said. Calm, terribly calm. This is not for you. This is for my own coward heart, to replay until I change. Vesper did not move. Rain hammered, then softened. The voice kept going. My name is Vion Hargris, East Meridian. Thursday evening, late 2003. After choir, the hour when pews stop pretending and exhale. I put this recorder on the piano because I cannot trust myself with eyes. I'm going to say what I have not said. Then I'm going to the parsonage to hang my shame on the doorknob like a wet scarf. I will knock. I will be who I am without apology. I will ask for mercy like it's not a crime in a town this small. A chair creaked. Somewhere inside Vesper's chest, something old sat up and listened. A second voice joined. A man, lower than gossip, higher than thunder. The sound of someone trying not to be heard through a door. Vion. In the way he said her name lived a whole book. I know, she answered. We are not alone. The tape caught a door. A breath of hallway. A new voice, young, not little, leaned into the recorder. Hello, Dax, the man said. What are you doing here? My mother forgot her purse, the kid said. She's in the car, trying not to be angry with you. That sentence weighed more than the storm outside. Vesper thumbed stop. The button sank a fraction and bounced back. The reels didn't care. They turned. You can take it, Vion told the kid, her kindness like a practiced skill. Second window. Tell your mother I'll drive behind you. Tell her I will come talk. Not long, in a way that matters. Footsteps leaving. Door. Wind gone. The room settling. This is foolish, the man said. His voice dropped half a tone. It's not our job to make the town new. It's our job to keep it from tearing itself apart. It's our job to be honest, she said. Every consonant a lit match. If the choir can sing the truth 3 nights a month, we can do it once. Lightning hit so close the annex shook. The beam hiccuped, the tape thinned, battery dying, and then out of that wobble, one more word. Please. Vesper pressed stop hard. The machine obeyed. The building exhaled. She locked the cabinet and wrote herself a note in block letters. Do not play again. Call Reverend Ardell in the morning. Ask about East Meridian 2003 choir. She tucked it under her thermos lid, swept the flashlight once across the blind faces of 100 yearbooks, missed the cabinet easing open, missed the tired spring choosing itself in the dark. Morning. Sky scrubbed clean. East Meridian Baptist was the color of unsalted crackers. The door was unlocked. Of course it was. Inside, it smelled like old wood, vacuum belts, and a sweetness she couldn't place until she saw 3 chrysanthemums in 3 vases, each like an apology for being bought late in the season. A woman in a blue sweater crossed the aisle with bulletins in both hands. Maria. Short hair you wear after an illness and back. She already knew Vesper's name Reverend Ardell had called, and she already knew the question. Vion Hargress, she said, settling Vesper into a pew. Contralto, you could build a roof on. That year, cut this town open. She helped truth into songs. Truth into Tupperware on your porch. When it wouldn't fit a hymn, she died in the spring. Not all things wait for permission. And the man? Vesper asked, hating herself a little. He left, Maria said softly. That week. Sends coat money at Christmas. Signs from far away. The mother with the purse forgave him once on Maine, and he flinched like she'd thrown a stone. What can a tape do that memory hasn't already done? Vesper thanked her, 2 sleeves touched for a second like a pact between strangers. Back at the annex, she set the recorder on the table and microwaved tea because the air felt wrong. At 1:12 p.m, the bell on the door didn't ring. It just opened. Tall man, Kansas State cap, jacket with 3 past lives. He moved like someone listening for a fire alarm only he could hear. Are you Vesper Lyle? He asked. She nodded. My name is Dax Hemphill. I grew up 6 miles east of East Meridian. My mother used to forget her purse. When she was tired of forgiving people, it gave her a reason to go back and be kind again. I think you have something that once listened to me when I was a boy. How did you know? Vesper asked. I woke at 3, he said. Clock doing that slow blink. Room smelled like hymnals. Heard my name the way it sounded before my voice changed. I don't own a tape player. Something spooled anyway. I remembered a night when a woman's kindness saved a man's job and a boy's faith. That kind of memory doesn't come back unless it's been invited. I think you invited it. She made him tea because that's what slows air. Told him about the recorder, the way it wouldn't stop, the please. He nodded like it fit a sore place he thought he'd hidden. Asked to hear it. She said, no, do not circulate, was written on the object itself, and archivists respect talismans. He asked again, but didn't move closer. The kind of stubborn she trusted. I don't want to hear me, he said. I want to hear her. The breath before she speaks. I want to remember what decency sounds like under bad lighting. Vesper turned the brass key. Lifted the machine with both hands. Wrote a sticky note in plain sight. Hargress permission pending. Listening requested by Dax Hemphill. Then she pressed play. Hiss. Blanket of old air. Vion again, scratch brave. If you are not me, stop. If you will not stop, at least do the kind thing and listen all the way through. I am done being half brave. The machine jumped ahead on its own, like it knew where today needed to land. Back to the two voices after the kid left. Tires over road seams. We cannot, he said. We must not. You will kill what mercy they have for me. We can, she said, steadying him by syllable. We must. Do you think the Lord is confused by us? He said her name. She said his. The tape spared the names. Names belong to kitchens and porches, not cassette spools. The room on the tape breathed wood, carpet, a beat-to-death piano, a hymn board with 4 numbers that looked like a secret only children can't crack. Then a knock. Not on the room's door, on the recorder. A tiny mosquito tap. A fingernail keeping a body from saying a big thing. Dax flinched. Vesper's eyes swept the annex. The annex held its breath, the way a building remembers why it was built, to store dangerous things gently. Vesper didn't stop it. Sometimes kindness is letting a sentence finish. Fine, the man said with funeral tiredness. Fine. We will be what we are. Names in the paper. Second pew. Let the looks do their best and fail. We will put our child, he stumbled, then finished. Our child in the nursery when it cries. We will take turns walking it. We will call my mother and tell her the right story. We'll give your mother the same gift. We will be small for a season, then we will stop being small. The piano wood made a sound like grain turning to meet a new angle of attention. A hand set down. Someone breathed, oh. Static braided tight. Speed slid the way old tape does when a gear hesitates. Vion came back one last time, urgent. If you are me, do not be a coward. If you are not me, do not make this a fable and sell it to yourself. This is not a ghost story. This is how to live. Click. Silence put its palms on everything. Shelves redrew their edges. Pencils remembered their jobs. Outside, the storm was now just damp behind the clouds. Dax covered his face with both hands. Vesper looked at the machine and thought of cellar jars with masking tape dates opened when the garden forgets its name. She hammered stop until stop decided to be true. Then came the work. Permission to request. A call to a woman 3 counties over who still carried the Hargress name and who, when she heard, said she had been waiting for that tape the way Valley people wait for apricots in June. Restrict access. Update the finding aid. Replace the sticky with a letter. And for 1 minute, they let the room have them. Archivist and stranger. Woman and man. 2 people sitting still, while an old backbone straightened inside a machine. Word got out anyway. It always does. Pickups, break rooms, space heaters. The story got wrong fast. A curse, a warning, a revival. They said it was a tornado siren played backward. They said if you listened at midnight, you'd hear your name the way only your grandmother said it. They said the recorder had no batteries and played all night. None of that was true. The truth was smaller, harder. The recorder played when lonely people stood too close and forgot to tell themselves the truth in time. In November, Torrin at dispatch heard his name, clean as winter, from the shelf with the lost and found bin. He stood up, said his name back out loud, into a room where another human could hear him, and the sound left the way regret leaves after 2 beers and a nap. He called Vesper. She told him to throw a towel over it, like you darken a bird cage when the bird thinks it's dawn. Reverend Nardell came at 2 on a weekday when Sun made long rugs on the annex floor. He asked to listen, cried without apology. Told Vesper he hadn't known back then how to keep rooms safe and people brave, and that the two were actually the same. He left a check for the leaky gutter. Memo line for roof. Nothing else. What else could you write? Winter sharpened everything. Spring mud had birthdays. Summer made the annex smell like paper and dry lemon peel. Vesper kept working her quiet miracles. She learned what thunder could change and what it could never touch. Late August, the tape did its last trick. It broke. Vesper was there, Dax too. He'd started stopping by, fixing the bad wheel, changing the bulbs nobody's ladder liked, because sometimes people earn comfortable silence after the first hard thing gets said. The machine chewed a loop into its own teeth. Vesper cupped it like a panicked bird. "It's okay," she whispered to plastic and time. "We've got you. We're listening." She had 3 clean copies made on a professional deck in Wichita. Masking labels, fire-safe box, permissions tucked like seed packets, on each in her sharp hand, to be played with consent only. And under it, softer. "Do not use this as weather." On the anniversary of the storm that shoved a box of wrong memories into her life, Vesper sat in the back pew at East Meridian. The building hummed with the quiet electricity of rooms that have been forgiven for what was done in them and what was refused and are willing, finally, to be only rooms again. Maria slid her a peppermint. They didn't say the names they weren't saying. The Hargris family wrote, "Keep it where it's surfaced. Don't let people make a party out of it. Let students hear it who think bravery is always big. Let tired people hear it when they need proof that decency can be made with 2 hands and 1 good sentence. Keep the names off. It doesn't need them." There was coffee and cookies in the annex hallway and a microphone that squealed once and then behaved. A reporter asked a trembling question. Vesper answered like someone who refuses to stage a drawing room drama when a kitchen table will do. "We're not here to gossip about the dead," she said. "We're here because a woman recorded who she chose to be and then did it. That's a civic treasure." The recorder sits now in a clear box so people can't love it wrong. On Saturdays, they ask if it plays by itself. Vesper says, "Only when you stand too close and forget you're alive and allowed to speak." Then she hands them a pencil and a form and teaches them how to leave something worth keeping for the next bad night. If you drive east out of Caldwell in late September and the sky bruises again, you might see a single lamp in 1 window. You might open the door, hear the chime, and breathe a room that smells like paper and patience. You might notice a soft hiss from a machine that retired from magic and kept its dignity. 2 people at a table, 1 with a pencil, 1 with a small wrench, bent over a ledger. You might understand why the recording should never have been played, and why, since it was, the only right response is to live in a way that won't require another like it. When the rain finally tears free, it will be loud and brief. Gutters will try their best. The annex will settle deeper into its foundation. On a shelf in a locked box, a cassette will keep its peace. And in 100 kitchens and a dozen sanctuaries, voices will go on doing what they were built to do when they belong to bodies willing to be ordinary and brave. They will say, "Please." They will say, "Stop." They will say, "Go now, it's time." And in the smallest, steady way that haunts longer than any ghost, they will say, "We are listening." He followed the voice in the woods. In late November 2016, a small Vermont town quietly changed the rules for how you answer the dark. Friday night, First snow falling like ash over the Black Spruce tract 160 square miles of public forest that starts just west of Cold Hollow and runs up to a ridge the color of old iron. Wind from the north braided through the needles in one long note that makes decent towns leave porch lights on a little later. Inside the Grange Hall, the fire department fundraiser clattered along. Raffle wheel, paper plates, kids ping-ponging between folding chairs. And one man, Orrin Vale, 39, a union electrician and lifelong night walker, kept glancing at the windows whenever a gust put its hard hands on the glass. Orrin's grandfather taught him to read the woods like a second alphabet. He carried a compass the way other men carry a pocket knife. He knew the low deer paths, the soft saddles between hills, the larch bark smell in thaw. He also knew the old county stories, the ones people tell without leaning in, the ones that move through a place like blood and show up on the skin only when the month turns cold. He knew them and didn't believe them, which his grandfather used to say is the quickest way to trip. At 9:30, the last raffle number got called. A cheer, a whistle under the eaves. Orrin stepped outside to swap boots at his truck. Official reason. Real reason, listen to the night. Sky with that pale pre-storm glow that shows up 5 minutes before the real snow decides to get serious. He tightened his laces, looked beyond the last lit porch at the forest's black shoulder. That's when he heard it. A word as soft as an unfinished thought. Hello! He locked up like an animal when a twig snaps wrong. Then a short laugh at himself, shake it off. Your name is not written in the air. Street still ordinary. A plow truck idling on the corner, TV glow in a window, boots crunching frozen grit. Nobody else stopped. He headed home, head down against the fine sting. At the seam where the last streetlight quits and the road becomes suggestion, the voice returned clearer from the tree line. Orrin, truck radio bouncing off metal, teenagers behind the mill, or just the human ear, born to fall in love with the shape of its own name. He didn't speed up, didn't slow down. Turned into his drive, hand on the knob, door opened, and the room, warm, yellow, smelling of dry wood and laundry soap, closed around him like a decision. Tea, boots off, house creaking as it accepted the cold. He told himself he'd imagined it. Then, from past his backyard, down where his fence met the Forest Service boundary, a child laughed and then shushed himself, the laugh of a kid who's won the game and wants to keep the secret. Orrin stood so fast the chair legs squealed. He took a big flashlight and his canvas coat, the one with nailhead nicks along the sleeve. Back step, breath in like medicine. The beam cut a clean cone through first skinned snow, birch leaves stuck like coins. Official reason, check the fence. Animals find holes like water. Real reason, follow the voice he said he wouldn't follow. 30 yards to the boundary, then down into the shallow gully where an old logging road becomes a mud stream in spring and a dark ribbon in summer. Tonight, a white seam sewn into black. He stepped over the sagging cedar corner post thing had wanted to retire for years. Stood in the old road. Trees leaned in, not unfriendly, just present. Far, nearer, then in the space between two breaths from nowhere at all. Orrin. Over here. Flat. Calm. Spoken by someone who knew he would come. Whoever you are, wrong yard. He said to give his mouth something to do. The wind eased. The light found only clean snow. Here's where the story could have ended. He could have gone inside, called Deputy Thad Lorman, and said the sentence men like him hate. Maybe I'm imagining things. Turn the deadbolt, put the kettle back on, let the weather change the subject. Instead, because his grandfather taught him to meet strangeness with stride, he went forward 2 paces, then 2 more. Good woods do a winter trick. Honest dark makes day colors inside it. Orrin walked 100 yards. 200. Counting numbers in his head must match the length of his stride. The road bent, fell, rose. The voice stayed at a leash-length distance. Third bend, a smell he couldn't place. Not smoke, not rot, a peculiar clean copper coins in snow stream under ice where no leaf has fallen. He stopped. The beam trembled once, steadied. I'm turning around, he told the night like a neighbor by trash cans. If you're real, say your name with your mouth. Answer from the left, low and near, made of breath, and something that owed breath nothing. Please. Old story word. No manners, perfect aim. He swept the light, the beam caught the hem of a wool coat behind a young fur. A dark sleeve, a pale idea of a face. His breath snagged, the sleeve moved a little. 2 slow steps, the way you approach a skittish dog. A woman. Mid-20 seconds. Hatless, hair slicked to her skull by wet snow. Wide eyes, not panic, just far away, like someone who's been walking too long in a sentence that won't end. City boots? Wrong season. She didn't look at Oren, she looked past him, toward the place where home lives in a man's imagination when he's far from it. Please, she said again, the syllable making a bull-sized cloud. I lost my brother. He's down there. He keeps answering me, but he isn't moving, and I don't have anything left to pay the dark with. Oren didn't ask the right questions. Not why here, not where are your tracks. He did what his grandfather would have done. Light to her shoulder so he wouldn't blind her. You're coming with me. We'll make a fire. Sheriff's decent. The ranger they send is decent too. We'll all go for your brother together. Half smile, like matching a photograph. Down there, she murmured, tipping her head. The ravine. Do you hear him? The forest held still the way it does when a pond is deciding if it will hold you. Far, closer, then from a compassless direction, a boy's voice. Over here, the cheerful tone of a June afternoon when the creek is yours and curfews are imaginary. How old? Oren asked. 12, she said. His name is Asa. He mimics the radio, learned it from our father, thinks if he hits the right tone, people treat him like a man, not a kid. Please. I think he fell. They moved. The ground began to disapprove. Oren nicked a white birch with his thumbnail string on the doorknob, breadcrumb for daylight, and began a new count. Short numbers you use to tie yourself to yourself. The land broke, narrow gash, choked with blowdown, bottom a slim black promise of water. Oren crouched, felt for purchase, chose a route that wouldn't let the night right itself without him. You wait here, he said, and pushed light into the dark. Halfway down, breath to the left, rustle to the right, and up ahead. Here, the boy said, and rapped twice like knuckles on a plank. Boot slipped, shoulder caught. Breath rode back into his chest like a stranger. I'm coming, he said. Tell me your name. Same sunny broadcast voice. Asa Vale. Wrong. Valley in a mouth that small? He looked back. The beam sketched the woman from the knees down, the slope eating the rest. She hadn't moved. He couldn't see her face. Asa, Oren tested the tone you use with a dog proud of its one trick. Your sister says you fell. The reply came from 3 places, one after the other, like a round sung wrong. I fell, I fell, I fell. Clean cold slid under his coat like a hand. He turned right. Light found an old plank bridging the cut, the kind loggers tossed down for a shortcut. On it, a pair of gray glove liners, small. Beyond it, a moving black that breathed. The voice came again, now behind him, now from the far slope, now from under the plank. Sweet, teachable, wrong. Oren. Hello, he tried. The last courtesy of people. Nothing changed. One careful step uphill. Another. The woman's boots stepped back to make room, silent as sleep. He put the light on her face. She let him. Very dark eyes, very dry, not cold, not warm. She looked like a person photographed in an eclipse. We're going, he said, level. He climbed past her, back to the old road, and did not run. Kept the beam 3 steps ahead, made sure the ground didn't decide to turn trickster. He said soft, the name of his grandfather. The ridge, the stream, the man in town who could fix anything with a coat hanger. That's how men like him pray. The voice followed at the same polite distance, calling his name, then trying other names, one by one, like a radio dial. Mael, Thad. His father's name, the one he hadn't heard aloud in 10 years. Shape, correct. Weight, wrong. The hair on his arms tried to grow a second coat. Fence. He stepped wrong, caught his coat, cursed with relief. The light washed the line. Trees were trees. Night was night. True snow now, steady and adult. On the stoop, from just the other side of the glass, the boy knocked his small knuckles against Oren's name. Please. Inside. Back against wood. House decided to keep him. A short, embarrassed laugh. He'd forgotten the world has edges. Flashlight down. Phone up. Dispatch picked up. Torin recognized the voice. No staircase of questions. Need a courtesy drive-by, Oren said. Something at my north line in the tract. A kid, or not. Send Thad. Tell him I'll stand on the stoop like a fool until his lights hit my fence. Sergeant Thad Lorman came slow, because slow bleeds pressure out of nights like this. The light bar painted the trees blue, red, white, a cheap, honest carnival. Thad listened to Oren tell it with the part of his mouth that jokes about fear and the part that doesn't. He nodded. If it's a kid, we help. If it's not, we're not feeding it names we care about. We wait till morning. Ranger Ilsa Peregrine will bring a map, and that way she has of seeing ground that doesn't want eyes. Oren dozed badly. In a chair, boots on, long light pointed at the back door like a promise. Woke at 3, then 4:30, to the kind of quiet, good towns keep as a favor, to people who worked till midnight. Morning, polite sheet of snow on the yard, no fresh tracks. Dressed for work he wasn't going to do, drank doctor-ordered coffee, met Thad at the fence. Ilsa arrived 10 minutes later with rope and calm. Ilsa Peregrine had the patience of someone who's pulled people out of rivers, trucks, and bad ideas. She let Oren map the night with words, asked 2 questions, had him repeat the glove liners and plank bit. Then, we'll walk to your nicked birch and the lip. We won't drop below without more bodies and a line. We'll bring a bell. We will not call names into the ravine. We won't teach the woods our voices. Do what I do. They walked the old road like a small procession, remarking only on the practical downed limb, slick spot, this looks fine and isn't. At the birch, she saw the thumbnail nick and gave him a coy small nod. At the lip, she set a glove down, put her ear over the edge, listened like a nurse, eyes closed a moment. When she opened them, nothing in them was darker, but something inside had locked its door. The bell, she said. Thad, stand back, palms open. Think about your wife saying your name on a normal day. Oren, think about your mother saying yours. I'll drop, we'll listen to what the ravine does with it. Little brass counterbell, line to wrist. She lowered it into the cut, tapped once. Sound went down and became shape. A second, softer ring came back, a beat late dutiful mimic, pleased with itself. Exactly what she expected, exactly what she didn't want. Another pattern, another shy echo. She drew the bell up. We back out, she said. Return at noon with 5 people, a net, and the kind of logic more eyes bring. We don't talk loud about this in kitchens. We don't make it a dare. Mael will call the mothers who woke sick today and confirm their boys are where they belong. Oren, go to work. Don't walk too close to windows. Keep your head. For 3 hours he tried. Mounted a panel, fixed a ground, listened to the radio gripe about roads, and a woman in the next county who kept a goat in a Subaru all winter. At 11:40, Mael called. Slowly, no punctuation. Every kid accounted for in Cold Hollow, the next 2 towns, and the next one after that. Only one mother admitted to a bad feeling her college-age daughter had forgotten to text goodnight. The girl replied, at 9, friends dragged her out. I don't mind being the woman who makes these calls, Mael added. At noon, Ilsa returned with 3. 2 retired SAR, diehards rope and stubbornness, and a state biologist whose face said, no time for folklore, polite to people who do. Stokes basket, a sleeping python coil of rope. Thermal scope, road again. Practical commentary only. At the lip, scope warmed. Ilsa panned slow. Pause. A private smile. A frown. Two small hot spots, raccoon. Third signature, doesn't behave. Warmer than air. Not moving, not shaped. Could be a rock remembering yesterday. Could be a hole trying to be a mouth. Could be nothing. Rope went to a jack pine who knew how to hold. Eulalia Pike tied knots like a magician. Holly Kempt tended the tail and told the rope jokes. Ilsa clipped in, checked gloves, looked at Oren. If I say walk, you walk. If I say sing, you sing. If I say back, you're halfway to the fence before I finish the word. Do you understand? Yes. She went over, no hero, just a person who rations courage by the cup. The basket followed, empty. Holly paid out, Eulalia counted. Thad kept palms open. Oren murmured the names again. The wind pressed its shoulder, then backed away, embarrassed. At the plank, Ilsa set her hand on the wood, didn't cross. Leaned, looked. The ravine hummed like a refrigerator in an empty house, steady, unashamed work. Her voice rose, clear without being loud. I see a glove. I see a hair tie. I see a shape that might be a bag or water. Acting clever. No body, no tracks. Mud's wrong. Too smooth for this time of year. Holly net. Down it went. She opened it, set it in the water, drew it slow fishing for a rumor. At the board she made a small sound, what you make when something lands in your hand that wasn't meant for you. A tape, she said. Cassette, labeled with a child's name. Ink bled, not a local surname. First name, maybe. Into a dry bag like a heart, looked left, right, beyond. Bring me up! At Oren's picnic table, Ilsa set the bag down. Holly opened it with thumb and forefinger reverence. The cassette slid onto a towel. Label, 3 stubborn letters. A smear. Another letter, a curl like the start of a V. A backward S someone had tried to fix. We take this to the county, Ilsa said. We don't play it at anybody's table. We don't invite it to speak until we decide who's earned the right to hear. Oren with me. Thad, drive the long way and stop at every porch where a mother is watching the window too much. Say the sentence that helps. Eulalia, Holly, pie at Mael's. Tell her nothing but that the rope behaved. County building, gray carpet, binder smell. Tape on a clean towel. Evidence tech, Poe Dunnett, a kind face and an anvil name. Step back half a step, then forward. Gentle resurrection deck. Lid down like tucking a child. Play, hiss. A room trying not to be a room. Boy's voice high, those long rural vowels. Hello, he chirped. To whoever finds this. You're smarter than my uncle. He thought this was a good place to hide it. I thought it was a good place to make him pay attention. Oren's hands went cold. Ilsa folded her arms. Poe watched the deck, not the wall. I learned from the weather radio, the boy went on. 2 notes, then a voice. So here are the 2 notes. A whistle. Almost true. This is a warning for Oren Vale from Cold Hollow. I'll be by your fence tonight to ask for your attention because my uncle didn't give me his. Bring a real adult if you want. Don't bring a recorder. The ravine doesn't like competition. Poe's hand hovered over stop and stopped. Tape wobbled. The voice shrank. In the back, a woman spoke soft, far like another night in another room. The boy laughed. I'm not supposed to laugh here, he said. Click. Out like pinching a flame. 20 counts of silence. Then Ilsa said what needed saying. Someone taught a child to mimic the radio and throw it like a stone. Someone told a story to the wrong head and let that head go walking with it into a night. A tape fell into a ravine where water thinks about voices. Next time, we will not let the water talk first. They worked. Knocked on doors along the ugly highway west of the tract, a trailer. A man who wouldn't answer until Ilsa said please the way a daughter does to a stubborn father. He opened. Saw the tape, covered his face, made a sound older than apology, said one name without looking up. Asa had been 12 inches 2006. His mother believed something that charged interest. His uncle believed in nothing but tricks. Asa memorized the weather radio panel like a prayer, used it for jokes, then defense, then art. He threw his voice into dark to see if the dark would throw it back. It did. One November night, he walked to the ravine to show the dark. He didn't come home. The uncle told no one, managed grief like a secret, called it clever. It was cowardice. They found a hair tie, 2 glove liners. In spring, when the ravine surrendered its slow winter work, a shoe with its lace still tied, and 1 small clean bone. They wrote what the report allowed. No spectacle, no feeding the woods names it hadn't earned. For a week, Orrin stood by his fence each night. Didn't call, didn't answer. Stood. Trees did the old work. Wind chose other halls. Once, very late, when the stars dropped their light lower, a voice from somewhere between branch and ground said his name without hunger. Orrin, like ticking off a list, he said nothing back, let air, cold, and needles speak over him. Went inside, boots by the door, slept without dreams. That winter, from Route 2, the tract looks like any black wall with silver on it. It is any forest. It will let you in if you bring a good map and let you out if you bring better friends. It will listen to anything you say, repeat very little. If you ever stand on a porch in first snow and something at the tree line uses your name, you'll do what Cold Hollow learned after Orrin Vale followed a voice once and decided not to. Again, go inside, put water on with her big. Call the person whose job is rope. Don't teach the night the words daylight will need. There are always voices in woods where wind earns its wages. Some are weather, some are water under ice. Some are branch and bird wearing a rhythm our heads mistake for language because language is the rhythm we gotta reach each other. And some are something else, a debt you pay by sitting still while the professionals work. If you must say anything to the dark, keep it brief and ordinary. Say your street, say your name the way you learned it when you were honest. Then say the one true sentence, Ranger Ilsa Peregrine gave this town to keep like a matchbox in a drawer. We are not answering you, we are not leaving you, we are coming back with more people and better light. The park ranger who found something he shouldn't have. In 2019, on a wind-bitten Wednesday in late February, deep in the Texas desert where the land is so wide it makes your chest feel small, a park ranger found something he was never supposed to find. It did not glow, it did not scream, it just hummed soft enough to doubt, old enough to be dangerous, and patient enough to wait 40 years for the right set of hands. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Big Bend National Park wears weather like a personality. That morning, the sky was the color of porcelain right before a storm, and the first wind rolled over the flats like a bad thought, hard, dry, and full of grit. The Chisos Mountains sat on the horizon like a deep bruise. Somewhere far off, a diesel engine turned in its sleep. A red-tailed hawk hung motionless over the river road, and the river itself stayed out of sight, the way a secret keeps itself out of your mouth. Not gone, just waiting. Here Halden had the early shift. He pulled his green and white truck off a rough 2-track and killed the engine. He left the last mechanical sound of the day right there in the silence and listened. Ravens argued along a basalt spine. The wind combed the sodal. He checked the radio, clipped to his vest, and patted the small pouch he carried, tourniquet, foil blanket, a roll of hard candy he never ate. He had been a ranger long enough that the ritual no longer felt like superstition. It felt like showing up. Dispatch came thin, the way winter voices do when they travel far. Calm as coffee. It was Juniper Voss. She gave him the entire morning in 3 sentences. 1, a couple was overdue on the Outer Mountain Loop, slow but stubborn, last seen at dawn yesterday. 2, Border Patrol wanted eyes on a footpath out near the Santa Elena sector, something about boot prints clipping along with deer tracks. 3. The odd thing. An alarm squawked from an old USGS box no one had keyed in for years. The unit was the kind that used to sunbathe on a little solar panel and gossip to Washington about rainfall or tiny quakes or numbers that made people in ties feel like they understood the desert. Not a priority. Just weird. Copy your list, Keir said. I'll check the footpath first, then swing by the USGS thing if light holds. Keep the overdue loop hikers in my pocket. If they hit a wall, they'll beg your radio before noon. Juniper warmed. Appreciate it, Keir. Una's in Panther Junction, and she's listening. She wants a call the second that antique turns out to be anything other than a rattlesnake condo. Also, hold on to your hat. This wind eats. My hat and I have an agreement, he said, smiling into the windshield. Then he shifted into 4 high and idled the last eighth of a mile. Ocotillo leaned like fishing poles in a dream. The ground changed under his tires, hardpan to sugar, sand to flint. He stopped where a shallow arroyo opened its mouth and stepped into a moving silence, the kind that lifts sound off you in strips. The sun hit his cheek like a warm coin. The footpath wasn't a path so much as a set of habits worn into the land. One moment it disappeared, the next it returned. As if embarrassed, he followed it by the rules all animals obey. Where a coyote would choose shade, the prince chose shade. Where the wash cut deep, the traveler stepped high along the bank, then drifted back down. Keir could read height in the length of a stride, weight in the heel bite, worry in the way a left foot trusted soil more than the right. The tracks cut south and west. Not his business, unless the story moved too close to paperwork. He gave the arroyo an honest hour, then turned toward a low ridge where the old stone shows its hand. The USGS unit sat where Juniper said it would, half hidden in shin oak, a dust-colored box with a turtle-back lid circled by a ring of rocks meant to keep cattle from testing it. A ground rod poked up like a silver reed. A cable that should have run panel to sensor lay severed and curled in a small defeated loop. Everything about the box said one word: old. The agency badge on the lid was sunburned down to a ghost. Keir crouched and touched the lock. It had been cut once in some other decade, replaced with a newer hasp, then left alone. He had bolt cutters in the truck. He also had a phone and a supervisor whose caution had kept more people alive than anyone would ever be able to count. He radioed Una Ketteridge and reported only the facts, no adjectives. Feels like a history lesson, Una said. But it pinged the system. Could be a dead battery hiccup, could be a bored cow, could be a deer with opinions. Use your judgment. If you cut it, I want eyes on whatever you see. On the walk back to the truck, the wind had put on a better shirt. It had shoulders. He returned with the cutters, braced the box between his knees the way you steady a barrel, and bit through the hasp in one clean press. The lid lifted, reluctantly, seal hiss, a sigh. Inside, a spray of sand in a neat gray well. At the bottom, dry as the moon, sat a metal cylinder the size of a coffee can, strapped in place. A conduit ran out of sight underground, snug, official. On the cylinder, a hand-etched label slept under yellowed tape. Lechuguilla Array, Node C, date July 1976. Keir didn't say anything out loud. Lechuguilla is a cave in New Mexico, days to the north, in a world underground, but the word tastes like limestone and men with carbide lamps. He snapped a photo, sent it to Una, and waited. The wind set a hand on the oaks and took it back. Una returned with a name, Harlan Sevier, at USGS. He says that's a shock sensor, not seismic. They use them at the tail end of certain tests to see if anything rattled. He also says if you'll be a saint and bring the cylinder here, their archivist will buy him dinner if it's got the word Lechuguilla on it. Happy to fund your stake, Keir said. One more look before I break the strap. He slid a hand along the cylinder. The metal felt cool, as if the sun hadn't mattered to it. His fingertips found a folded paper tucked under the strap. He pinched it free. A field, tag time, weather, who to blame. The ink had softened but held. The name on the tag wasn't one he knew. Ivar Cade. Below the name, replace node C if hum persists. Call Rourke. Keir sent a photo of the tag. This time, Una took longer to answer. When she did, her tone changed the temperature of the room he was standing in. Rourke Delmont used to be a deputy in Terlingua, she said, retired to a house outside Marathon with too many cats and a ham radio. If his number still exists, Juniper will find it under the paper nobody ever looks under. Bring the cylinder. I'll have Juniper patch you through when she digs him out. Before lifting the cylinder, Keir did one more thing. He leaned down, put his ear near the well, and held his breath the way EMT school teaches you to make a room go quiet. He heard exactly what anyone would expect to hear. Nothing. Or, if you wanted to be honest with yourself, the faintest, straightest suggestion of something metallic remembering its job. Not a sound you could brag about, not even a sound you could swear to. Still, he felt it the way you feel a draft in a closed house. He wrapped the cylinder in a blanket and set it behind the truck seat. The wind decided they were partners now. On the drive to Panther Junction, he kept his hands loose on the wheel while his brain ran two lanes, one labeled hikers, one labeled hum. The radio whispered, then cleared. Juniper. And then another voice riding in on her line, dry, amused, patient, like a man people invite to funerals because he won't make it about himself. You found something that used to pay my salary, the man said. Rourke Delmont, please tell me you didn't open anything that says do not open. I don't drive after lunch. Keir told him the story from the top. Rourke told one back. It started in the 1970s when men wore ties into the field and ended when people stopped writing months out longhand. The short version, at the end of a certain era, a few hush-hush pieces of gear got planted in places they didn't belong and then forgotten when one team assumed another team would clean up. It wasn't sinister, it was human. Drawers are easier to open than to close. Ivar Cade, Rourke said, trying the name on his tongue. He was a tinkerer, listened to ground like it had opinions. He had this thing about humming. Said if a box hums, you treat it like a street dog, no sudden moves. Stop when it stops. Sounds like his note. If you get that cylinder into your office and crack it, and something inside looks like it wants to be played on an old machine, call me back and let me be foolish one more time. I promise, Keir said, because men who talk like Rourke do not ask for many promises. Panther Junction did its lunch hour ballet as Keir rolled in. High schoolers in borrowed hats argued about which loop had a better spring. A sunburned couple congratulated themselves for picking the Vista Trail instead of the tree trail. Una met Keir at the side door and walked him down the coffee and dust hallway to a small room she called the museum, because if she didn't love it, it would have become a closet. The cylinder went on a table cleared of maps that had been retired by someone who refused to admit it. They did it by the book. Photos first, as if the object had a lawyer. Gloves next. The strap had baked into one long sigh. It gave when asked. Under the lid was not a riddle. It was a spool of quarter-inch tape, wound neat, the kind that used to carry voices and now mostly carries nostalgia. Una didn't rout politely. Rourke, it's your foolish day. He promised 15 minutes and made it in 12. He looked like the part of Texas that doesn't apologize, pearl snap shirt, jaw that only meets a barber when forced. He carried his machine under his arm like a hymn book someone kept by the bed. He set it on the table with gentle authority. I kept one, he said, in case my cousin wants to hear his band from 1983 and pretend it matters. Let's hope the belts haven't turned to spaghetti. They threaded the tape, slow, careful. The tape looked good. Old, yes, but not brittle. Una closed the smoked lid with both hands. Rourke pressed play. The machine thought, then did the thing it was born to do. Sound came. Not music. Space. The kind of wind you only hear inside a square room where corners argue. Beneath the wind, metal ticked cooling, settling. A voice tested a frequency and lost interest. Silence held its breath too long and then broke in two. A different voice, young, certain read a time and a barometric pressure, and then ducked his head like he was embarrassed. Minutes walked by and refused to hurry. Kier forgot he was standing. Una leaned without leaning. Juniper appeared in the doorway and didn't cross it. Around minute 11 or 12, voices started coming in more often, short barks of men in sun stupor. They tossed numbers back and forth. Then the numbers stopped, and something in the room with them tried to take the speaking away. "Do you hear that?" the young voice said, pleased and uneasy at the same time. "That's the hum. It's not in the wires. It's under me." Rourke leaned in. The belts made a private adjustment. A long, thin sound slid up under everything, like someone dragging the flat of a blade across piano wire. You could hear the tape hesitate, then pull itself together and keep going. There was more jokes about coffee that wasn't a man saying lunch like it was a destination. The young, certain voice, again, not yet, and later, now. At the very end, after the leader flapped and the machine hiccuped, there came 3 small knocks. Tap, tap, tap. Could have been anything, metal cooling, a knee against a table leg, but the kind of anything that sticks. No one spoke for a while after the reel stopped. Una found 2 mugs. Juniper poured from the thermos she kept for not really emergencies. Rourke lifted the spool with both hands like it was a plate his grandmother would notice if he chipped. "What exactly did we just hear?" Juniper asked finally, not demanding an answer. "Somebody hitting the sensor lid? A can rolling across the floor? Why do 3 little taps make 3 people look at each other like we just heard a prayer said backwards?" Rourke answered the tape. "If Cade wrote that tag, and if the wind outside doesn't mind me being honest, I'd guess he heard something he decided was not wind, not gear, and not cattle. If he thought it was a hum, he would do what he always preached. He'd keep his mouth shut, he'd count. He'd refuse to answer. He taught me that when we worked a roadside call box that wouldn't stop ringing on its own." Juniper smirked a little. "Do we have to file a report that uses the word haunting?" "We have to file one that uses the word found," Una said. Maybe returned. Anything else lives with time. The day pushed back into its chores. Rourke took the tape to his truck and swore he wouldn't play it for anyone who owed him money. Kier signed the chain of custody with a flourish just exaggerated enough for Juniper to roll her eyes and accuse him of showing off. Then he stepped back into a heat that had moved 1 shade higher. He still had the overdue hikers in his pocket. The river would throw a cold ribbon across their route. The front would stand up and try again by dawn. 2 hours later, he found them under a cottonwood, unhurt and mad at themselves, like all healthy overdues. The man's name was Corliss, which made Kier like him for no reason. The woman's name was Mylene, which made him like her for matching. They had underestimated the sun for the 500th time in human history. Kier gave them water, changed the rhythm of his sentences so they could cover their pride, and walked them back with a conversation about birds that let everyone keep the day. By the time he signed off from Juniper, the sky had turned the color of a bruise willing to heal. He drove to his little place outside Study Butte and sat on the step with his off-duty radio, playing a baseball score under a song. An insect flung itself against the porch light, learned nothing, and decided to live anyway. Kier set his boots side by side because the day deserved it. He slept hard and dreamless. Morning came with a sound like someone riffling a fat book. The front finally threw itself across the basin. His phone buzzed at 6. Una. Rourke had gone home, changed his shirt, then changed his mind, and gone to Marathon to pick a fight with the archives. He found Ivar Cade's obituary. 2 lines and a date. 2006. Loved the desert. Survived by nobody. Not the same as alone, but close enough on paper. What followed was a day of strange chores that make up the secret half of a park ranger's job. A woman dropped her keys into a pit toilet at Rio Grande Village, and Keir recovered them with a coat hanger and a moral crisis. A Mexican Jay picked not one but two sandwiches off a truck bed and strutted into a mesquite. A man cornered Keir at a trailhead to ask, with pure sincerity, where the dinosaurs sleep at night. By late afternoon, the front was empty and the air could remember how to be clean again. Without planning it, Keir's truck found the two-track, then the ridge. He didn't expect the stand of oaks to look guilty. He didn't expect to kneel beside the empty USGS box and feel right behind his breastbone the desert's particular permission, the one that says you can stay if you keep your voice small. He put a palm on the metal and counted to 10 without breathing. Then he exhaled and counted to 10 again. A raven landed behind him and made a single rude comment. Keir laughed, surprised by his own sound, and turned as if he'd given his back to the wrong thing. The raven hopped, decided the joke had landed, and went back to its schedule. Keir wiped his palms on his pants and told the box out loud that it was not an afterthought. Then he walked back to his truck. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 2 miles down the road, the radio jumped in a way that made Keir grab the volume out of pure goodwill. Juniper again, voice controlled, verbs undecided. Bringing you an incoming, she said. I have a caller listening to an old field tape on a machine in his truck. He would like you to meet him at mile marker 23 on the Marathon Road and decide if he should stop. He says please twice. I believe it's Rourke Delmont. On my way, Keir said, because you don't let a good man have an embarrassment alone on asphalt. Rourke's truck waited on the shoulder like a patient mule. Driver door open. The little tape machine sitting on the seat where a person would be. The reels turned greedily. They didn't ask for much, just power and a little faith. Rourke kept one hand near the brake lever and the other on the wheel, like he might have to drive the whole arrangement away from something you can't swerve around. It's nothing, he said as Keir approached. Wind in a different hat. Men I used to be, saying numbers the way sunburned men do. And yet, listen to the part that pretends it's not there. They listened. Under the wind, not behind it, like a floorboard under a rug, a low line had begun. To call it a note would suggest it had manners. It didn't. It was a long idea someone forgot to end. Even the machine grew cautious, as if its belts could feel the shape of the room that tape had once been in. On the recording, the young voice spoke again. Careful this time, do not answer it. If it chooses a rhythm, let it be a rhythm without you. Rourke clicked stop with his knuckle. The truck filled back up with honest air and the faint smell of old foam. He was a crank, Rourke said with affection. Cade. He liked to say there are only two kinds of people under the sky. The ones who answer first and the ones who listen first. Then he'd pick which one to be like he was changing shirts. He loved seeing what the world would do if he made it take the second move. Why here? Keir asked. Because I'm old, Rourke said, and I'm practicing telling a story to the place it happened. So Keir let an old man stand with his truck and his tape and his empty road and practice while the light thinned and the Ocotillo leaned into evening. The next week, life returned to practical. A coyote watched Keir eat his sandwich and didn't complain when he got none. A bus full of fourth graders sang a prickly pear song until their teacher begged mercy. The tape traveled to Fort Collins in a box with 3 labels and enough bubble wrap to outlive all of them. Harlan Sevier wrote an email full of thank yous and jargon that made gardening sound attractive. Una allowed the museum to be a museum for 1 more hour. Juniper added a sticky note to her console that said hum in tidy pen. She said it was a reminder nobody argued. Spring showed up like a kindness you don't deserve, but take anyway. Wildflowers did their loud, brief job. The river had just enough weight to trick children into thinking it was permanent. Keir took 2 days in a cabin near Terlingua and practiced being nobody. He woke once with a name in his mouth that wasn't his and laughed at the rafters for the body's weird tricks when the mind is too full of story. Late April brought a letter to Panther Junction on paper that believed in itself. Una slid it open with a pocket knife just because it's always fun. Ione Greathouse, archivist, wrote in a tone you'd expect from someone who can't believe she's paid to do what she loves. Thank you for the cylinder, thank you for the tape. They had duplicated it and cleaned it until someone might mistake it for modern, though its real value was in the fact that it wasn't. As for the hum, it did not exist in the tape as a measurable frequency. It existed as a missing one, a hole where numbers stopped trying to be numbers and then remembered themselves. The packet included a transcript with timestamps and that one line that still put a chill on the back of everyone's neck. Do not answer it. Keir read the whole packet at his little table by his one window. He read it slowly, the way you set out water for an animal you hope will trust you. Then he called Rourke and offered to drive up. Bring limes, Rourke said. I'll bring something that burns properly. They sat on Rourke's porch while the cats did criminal things around their boots. What did we find? Keir asked the dark. He wasn't asking for nouns. Rourke lifted his glass, set it down. Proof of boring bravery, he said. Men in a small room under a big sky who decided not to be interesting in the wrong way. They heard a thing they couldn't own, named it hum, counted it, refused to answer, ate lunch, and went home. Then they left us a spool no one cared about until a winter wind told it to wake up. A train with no business being that close laid a ghost horn over Marathon and moved on. Cats faced the horizon like it owed them. The stars did what they always do after weather, brag. The next morning, Keir stopped by the museum. The empty cylinder sat on a shelf at eye level. The card below it said the simplest possible thing. Found near oak, returned to desk. The rest lived between the wind and anyone willing to lean close. On a Friday in May, when tourists arrived like convoys and the park gets louder on the surface and quieter underneath, Keir hiked up a dry wash and saw 3 small round marks pressed into dust on a flat rock in the shade. He touched one lightly with the back of his middle finger. The way you test a skillet you don't trust. The marks were fresh. They could have been made by a walking stick. They could have been made by the end of a tape case. They could have been made by a raven being too literal. He took a picture anyway. Then he wiped the rock clean and laughed at himself, because the rock did not mind and did not notice. That night he called his sister in New Hampshire to hear how her voice could make heat talk about snow. He told her a version of the story with the precious parts swapped out for ones that wouldn't. She said she loved that he had a job where silence came with rules. He said he loved that she had a job where noise had neighbors. They hung up like families do when there is more to say and no hurry to say it. Summer leaned in, heat stacked on heat. Tourists tried to buy wisdom by buying bigger hats. The monsoon teased, then teased again, then finally did the decent thing and broke on the mountains, letting Cactus drink for real. Keir learned one more part of the park and then another, then deliberately forgot the exact shape of the gray cylinder, so that if it ever wanted to remember itself to him, it would have to do it honestly. He never heard the hum again. He wasn't disappointed. The desert does not owe encores. He heard the small faithful noises that make this place a sentence you can live, in quail cubbies rustling like loose paper, the groan of a truck asked to be patient, a woman laughing in a campground when a child said the stars were a spill. He filed 2 reports that month that used the word found and did not once use the word weird, which felt like progress. Now and then, on a long stretch between somewhere and nowhere, Keir would thumb the radio and ask Juniper the only question you ask a dispatcher who has saved you from your own hurry more times than either of you can tally. What's your world tonight? And she would read a list that wasn't a list flat tire near Terlingua, a man who locked his keys in his canoe, a long-haul driver whose wife had a baby while he sat on the shoulder crying and not caring who saw. That's the net holding up the desert. Not ropes, voices. When autumn returned with its clean knife, Juniper added a second sticky note by her console, not to replace the first, but to keep it company. 3 words. Do not answer. She said it was a reminder. Keir said it was a sermon. Una called it practical and wrote a procedure memo that future rangers would roll their eyes at and then follow anyway. Early December. Cold morning. Keir drove out to the ridge where the oaks keep their small green and parked, facing the wind that once crawled under his shirt. He walked to the empty box, set his hand on the rim, and spoke the way a man talks to a stone when no one is looking. He hoped whoever had listened first had wandered off to a place with shade and water and endless lunches. He said 3 names: Ivar Cade, Rourke Delmont, Juniper Voss. The wind moved over the far country with slow hands, and Keir felt the small truth that keeps a person working in a hard place. Sometimes finding what you should not have found teaches you how to leave it exactly where it belongs and how to carry it forward in your mouth without letting it borrow your name. On the drive back, a roadrunner cut across his bumper with the cheerful felony of a thief who knows the law. Keir laughed out loud, and the day liked him for it. At the junction, he signed for a parcel of new trail signs and accepted a slice of pumpkin bread from a volunteer in a vest covered in pins. Una raised a hand in the hallway and, without slowing, told him to go home and let the evening keep itself for once. He said he might. That night, as the first hard cold settled across the park, as the river crouched and the coyotes traded minutes on the microphone of darkness, as Juniper's voice crossed and recrossed other voices in the net that keeps the desert patient, Keir sat on his porch with the lights off and listened to the nothing that is never nothing out here. He set his palms flat on the wood. He let the day lift like steam. When a small breeze passed his ear, he did what the wise do in rooms where something asks to be answered. He counted to 10, then to 10 again. And because he knows the difference between bravery and good sense, he did the hardest, bravest thing he could do. He said nothing at all. What happened inside the tunnel changed him forever. It starts with first snow over the Cheat River, late November, year 2011. The kind of ash-colored flurry that only sticks where the mountain keeps its shade. Down in the cut, where an old railroad spur once ran through Brushy Mountain, there's a brick-lined tunnel that still breathes iron and limestone like it never retired. Locals know. Places like that are older than whatever story you brought with you. The man who walked in that night was 38-year-old Thayer Mott. 2 years home from a blistering overseas contract where dawn came with a buzzer and the heat tried to erase you daily. Back in West Virginia, he did county roads, cones, culverts, sleeves, rolled exactly the way your grandfather approves of. Off the clock, he carried radios for fun, listened to the weather net the way other men listened to baseball. Thayer lived alone in a small cottage that apologized every winter for one window that never sealed right. And he had a rule: write things down and the world behaves, at least for a while. At exactly 1950, by a cheap, luminous watch whose hands never lied, Thayer stepped into the Brushy portal. He'd told dispatch Lennox Vale that he'd walk the right-of-way from Brushy to Quarry, check drains, note a small rock slide from last week, headlamp, warm white, a spare in his pocket because batteries lie. He descended the stone throat. Brick arched overhead, ballast underfoot, old rails long since lifted clean for quick money. He kept to the shoulder, counted steps, scraped slate from the crown with the toe of his boot, and wrote little facts on a card because little facts keep the big ones honest. 50 steps. The foot sound changed dry to damp. The tunnel sound, river on stone, temperature wind, steady drip settled around him. And then at 2012, something new slid in beside him. Not ahead, not behind, beside. A girl's voice. Not echo, not machine. A child's cadence without the child's confidence. First a rising vowel like someone tuning their courage. Then a single word delivered with precise hope. Thayer. Too close. He did not answer. In Monongahela County, rule number 1 for deep places is simple. When the dark learns your proper name, do not answer. The voice tried again. Thayer. A tiny clatter shoe to bottle somewhere along the brick. A little grit slithered down the wall. Thayer laid his left palm flat to the tunnel to tell his nerves where his body ended, lifted his radio with his right, and went bureaucratic on purpose. County Mott, Brushy tunnel, on foot, moving west. I have a voice event. Log it at 2012. I'm not answering. Continuing, slow to center. Line of retreat established. Over. Lennox came back with the calm you hear from storm spotters who've seen it all. Copy voice event. Keep that lamp honest. And if the dark tries to be clever, you be boring back. Thayer moved 10 careful steps. The story he didn't request kept coming. The floor sagged, a half-inch subsurface water chewing quietly at the bed. The left wall had the tiniest bow. A weeping drain left a snail-clean stripe. He crouched, touched the wet, tasted iron and cold limestone, flagged it, kept going. The voice shadowed him, not obedient, but parallel. Third try, it used the weapon, it had his name, and then added a confession. Even worse in a tunnel. I followed the light and I can't find it now. The hiss after the last consonant, tears. He pictured a dozen real kids from a dozen real houses. He ignored every single picture. He reached the midpoint. Roof resonance turned musical, air more stone than river, that weird acoustic almost song round spaces get. He let the headlamp rest on his boots and counted his heart twice. That's when the tunnel itself changed its mind. A long, deep breath in the brick. A liquid rush underfoot like a drain clearing its throat after months. And from far ahead, one hollow knock as if wood tapped wood in a place with no wood. County, he said evenly. New sounds, water movement under bed. I don't love the word void, so I won't use it, but the floor is considering options. I'm heading quarry side and will hold. Over. 10 minutes into that retreat, the brick made a quiet, serious sound. Only people who've been around masonry hear mortar unlatching. He shot the lamp up. A hair-fine seam ran lengthwise across the crown, like a hand-drawn horizon. He didn't run, he left. The daylight made the world small again. He sat on a frost-etched limestone chunk and breathed until gravity stopped arguing. He waited for backup. Sheriff Enoch Pyatt arrived ex-mine rescue, slow until work begins. Good lamp. Rope in a hasty coil. He listened without interruption, nodded once like the night had finally learned to tell its story right. They went in together. Pyatt pushed a broader beam holes live where danger sits. The seam was worse. 3 bricks down, the line dropped like a child slipping while holding hands. Then the voice returned. Not Thayer this time. One word that made both men remember there was a ridge above them and an even bigger sky above that. Daddy. Pyatt went to one knee, palm on brick, like you calm an old dog. He didn't answer the voice. He addressed the wall. We're not breaking you tonight. No names. We'll bring math, shoring, and bored people who'd rather argue football than be brave. A small clatter. 30 paces ahead, standing water, a foam cup with a crescent bite drifting, ripples walking out, dying polite. They backed. They called in 2 volunteers with timbers and wedges. Inside, they propped either side of the seam so Goodwood could talk to bad ideas. Denied, the voice grew patient in a nasty way, humming, please, measuring consciences, waiting for a slip. Pyatt looked at the crew, head out. To Thayer, your report will say we stayed for the welfare check, left for structural reasons. The other reason they didn't say, the seam and the voice had begun to sound like the same thing. The county fenced Brushy indefinitely, which translated means permanently. Teenagers found new holes. Grown men found other ways to leave their lives for an hour. Thayer went back to culverts and shoulders and the safe ache of good work. But the tunnel wasn't done with him. January brought gray armor to the river, wind to the sycamores, and a call from the county, meet Hobie Kress at the quarry side. Hobie was a snowshoe happy content guy who posted reverent videos in places that do not want influencers. He'd filmed himself stepping 5 feet inside the arch and dusting snow off his hat like he was blessing it. The county wanted a conversation, not cuffs. Against his will, Thayer liked Hobie. Clean cut, the smile of a man forgiven by the world for 30 years. Thayer said, "The brick is tired, the river is mean, the air is not your friend." For once, Hobie listened. Then Hobie said something that wiped the smirk off. "Fate. Thought I heard a kid in there." Thayer asked, "What did she say?" Hobie blinked. "Just my name." So Thayer started stopping by the portal after supper. Not to be a hero, to be a witness. Some nights need witnesses. Late February, year 2012. Thaw hit too fast. The valley filled with water's angry negotiations. 2 a.m. The volunteer chief blows the horn. Hyatt calls Thayer the kind of hour you don't justify your choice of company. At Brushy, the fence lay meek in briars. The tunnel exhaled a runner's breath. They set a line, moved to mark 3, and stopped, floor sound wrong. Hyatt's ankles, calibrated by years, said, "Hollow wants a friend." Down tunnel, a light, not theirs. Clean, white, fresh batteries, eager to please. A man's voice, "Mara, Mara, honey, answer me." Then the noise rescue people know in their bones. A foot into nothing, Scrabble. A half-swallowed curse because the man believed in God and wanted his attention, not anybody else's. Thayer dimmed, angled, reached, and caught Hyatt's sleeve not to yank, to warn bones. He projected county calm over a private prayer. "Sir, stop. Aim your light at your boots. We're county. We're coming to you on a line. Don't step. Don't say her name again." The man froze like a new company rule just slid down from corporate. He lifted his light, then remembered and put it back on the floor where it belongs. Thayer and Hyatt bellied the last distance. A pocket of water had eaten everything under 5 ties. A plank mercifully there bridged. They slid the man back, clipped him, and sent him out on a promise of coffee. He would later tell the paper he cried, and no one made him feel small for it. He would not tell them the name the tunnel whispered to him to get him inside. When his light was gone, the tunnel was not quiet. The voice came one last time. Not the child. Or the child, upgraded for cruelty. "Your father called for you, and you did not come." Hyatt closed his eyes by reflex, opened them on purpose. Thayer didn't move. He thought of a fluorescent desert overseas, a generator droning in 2 notes you can hear through walls. He thought of a high school hallway where the light always flickered and a teacher never once guessed what he might be good at. He thought of his mother laying a dish towel over biscuits she couldn't afford and doing it anyway, because sometimes a boy needs to see abundance he didn't earn. He radioed in a voice that knew how to hold a line. At seam, water in bed, void under ties, 10 to 15, past mark 3. 1 civilian retrieved. Tunnel practicing party tricks. We are leaving in a walk. After the flood signed its name and crews policed the driftwood, small pieces that look like birds, big pieces that look like law, the county rebuilt the fence, bolded the sign, and kept the order permanent. The tunnel stayed. The voice, if it stayed, learned boredom, because this county does not answer. What the tunnel changed in Thayer wasn't superstition, it was speed. He started talking slower to people who live half their lives in the dark. He learned to stand on the downstream side of a bad decision, so if someone ignored a fence, his body'd be where it needed to catch them. He untied his boots on the porch, not the kitchen. Thresholds matter. Spring, the county finally replaced that chronic sycamore. A woman, Hetty Dockery, knocked on Thayer's door with a box of rooted maple slips and a photograph from her father's desk. A girl in an expensive dress and a useful coat gone since the 1970s. Hetty asked if he'd go with her to the portal and speak the name once. He didn't correct her, he went. She said the name. The tunnel gave back a sound like the end of a hymn key change. No organ. On the walk down, she stepped steadier than on the way up. Thayer married late. A nurse whose laugh lingers in rooms after the door shuts. They bought high ground, a porch that never needs apology, a basement that never needs courage. Some nights he writes 2 lines to keep the past small. The tunnel is still there, I am still here. In church, when a baby cries during a hymn, he doesn't wince. He lets the sound pass through like a storm already spent over another ridge. Ask him at the gas pump. No nonsense what the voice was. He'll give you the closest truth he owns. The dark repeats whatever it hears most. In a county that refuses to answer when a hole throws names at them, the dark learns boredom and moves on. He'll say it while checking tire pressure before driving out to a grumbling culvert. He'll be behind on sleep and alive. Teenagers will still swear Brushy has a ghost. Good. The night's big enough for practice. Daylight's big enough to remember a man went in, came back, and adjusted his life one click slower. Every November, first ash snow clinging to Brushy's shoulder, Thayer pulls into the turnout, kills the engine, and listens. Sometimes nothing. Good. Sometimes river talking to stone. Better. Once in a while, a faint knock. Wood on wood, in a place with no wood. He does the thing that saved him in the tunnel and saves him in living rooms and hospital corridors where grief learns to smoke. He doesn't answer. He breathes. He makes the world small. He turns the key and drives to the next address, where a drain needs to remember what a drain is. What happened inside that tunnel did change him into the kind of man who practices slow, decent caution. Rope in the truck, second lamp in the pocket, habit of calling the county when a night grows teeth, and taped to the fridge, written in words, not numbers, a simple instruction for the people he loves on some future windy night when the siding is practicing scales. If you hear your name from a place that cannot love you, do not answer. Count to 20, call me. Count to 20 again, I'm on my way.